The United States House of Representatives has passed two bills on Friday aimed at protecting abortion rights in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn the 1973 landmark Roe versus Wade ruling. Lawmakers have approved an updated version of the Women's Health Protection Act, which will codify abortion rights protections into federal law in 219-210 vote. Now, the House also passed the Ensuring Access to Abortion Act, which will ban states from punishing those who travel out of state for reproductive health care. That in a vote of 223 to 205. Samantha Karlin is the founder and CEO of Empowered Global. She is an expert in gender equity and hosts the show Samantha Politics, political talk show about global politics and women's rights. She joins us now to talk about this. Thank you so much for joining us, Samantha. Perhaps let's just first start by tracking state changes now that abortion is outlawed. Just of the states, do we have a fairly accurate idea of how many thus far have followed through with the Supreme Court decision?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Unfortunately, on circumstances that I wish were not the case. Right now, abortion is illegal even in cases of rape and incest in Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, South Dakota, Wisconsin, which also is making performing abortions a felony from a law from 1849 that they've revived, which is a little bit wild thinking about how we've gone back in time. West Virginia and Texas will have no exceptions later this summer. North Dakota, Tennessee, Wyoming, and Arizona will also be coming soon. And then you have these states that are in limbo, where the ban went into effect, and then there was an appeal, and then a federal judge blocked it, like in places like Arizona, where it's kind of unclear what's going to happen. It's a little bit of a roller coaster right now between the states, the federal system, judges, appeals, because obviously this is a public health issue for a lot of women, and people are going to die as a result of this, and they don't want this banned in their state.
As you say, it's a public health issue. It has to do with sexual and reproductive health rights. I know you've written a thesis on this, especially just in terms of democracy. I want to look at a state like Illinois and Wisconsin. I believe Planned Parenthood is looking at combining efforts to ensure that those in Wisconsin, which I believe abortion is banned, can travel to Illinois to get abortions there. How many states are, doing this in terms of civic organizations, but where the governments themselves are to heed these legislative changes that anybody who wants to access some of these reproductive health rights is free to do so, that they actually do have agency over their bodies?
Yeah, so there's a lot of states now that are basically putting in protective measures so that people can travel to their state and get an abortion, and it's not going to be illegal to do that. And or the doctor in, a state, Indiana, where it's not allowed in another state, is not going to be prosecuted for giving an abortion to that woman. And that's what a lot of places are trying to do now that are more protective about abortion rights and do realize, again, that this is a women's health issue. I love that sign that says abortion is healthcare. So what you're basically seeing right now is kind of a battle of the blue states, which are saying this is a fundamental right, and we're going to do everything that we can, whether it's governments, civic organizations, to not only protect and enshrine abortion rights in our state constitution, but also to make sure that women who are in states where they cannot access abortion are able to travel to our state, are getting the funds to travel to our state, and are able to get abortions in our state. And then you have the other way, which is the super red states like what we talked about, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, that are trying to do as much as they possibly can to make it difficult for women. There's even been some talk of putting risk anklets on pregnant women as if it was, you were on house arrest from prison, which is ludicrous, to make sure that women are not traveling out of state to get an abortion. And I will point out, this is all within a country that has no federal paid leave, no universal health care. If you have this child, there's no money that's going to say, oh, you have the child, we're going to give you a bunch of money to take care of this child. It's just going to drive people deeper and deeper into poverty, because the women that are not going to be able to get abortions are the ones who are already living below the poverty line.
Now, Samantha, I know that especially Republican states have been lobbying for this for years, banning of abortion, and finally it's happened. And as I mentioned, you wrote your theses on transitional justice in terms of abortion and women's rights. And I want you to talk me through it. We'll talk about the fact, what you've just mentioned, that women are now going to be, quote unquote, marked as pregnant and policed in terms of what they do with their bodies thereafter. But President Joe Biden has made it clear that the only way to secure a woman's right to choose is for Congress to restore the protections of the federal law, and that would also include forcing hospitals, for instance, to provide abortion services if the life of the mother is at risk. But that is only if it is at risk, the life of a mother. So how does this go counter to transitional justice? America is always telling us that it is a free world, it is the most democratic country in the world. I mean, how does this stack up?
Yeah, I mean, it's an embarrassment. This is an absolute embarrassment to America and to our reputation. And what you're now seeing with regards to the midterms is that whereas Joe Biden has a very unfavorable rating, that more people than we initially thought actually do plan on voting for Democrats in the midterms because of these two issues, which are abortion rights and gun control. Because we also have a gun violence epidemic that is out of control in our country. And now, if we look at other countries that have introduced restrictive abortion rights that are in, the quote unquote Western world, we have Poland, which has seen an unbelievable rise towards populism as the main country in Europe that also has a restrictive abortion law. But most Western countries allow abortion. This is, again, it's a fundamental human right. And we've also seen other countries in the past 5 years alone. Argentina legalized abortion, Mexico decriminalized abortion. Chile is writing a new constitution, whereas from my inside sources, the right to abortion is going to be enshrined within the constitution in Chile. Ireland legalized abortion. So we're seeing all of these countries all over the world. Most of them are liberalizing when it comes to abortion laws. Furthermore, this has actually pushed the Roe v. Wade ruling some countries to even further enshrine abortion laws or make more protection for abortion so that they don't have crazy populists like in the US take over and all of a sudden decide that it's going to go to the wayside. So frankly, it's anti-democratic. There's no other way to put it. This is anti-democratic. And what it says is that women are not human.
How likely are these laws to influence international trends? I mean, just in terms of what's happening now in America, I believe that some laws prohibit abortion at the point of first detectable heartbeat, while others restrict abortion at 15, 22 or 24 weeks of pregnancy. So the gestational age is somehow influencing whether or not people can access abortion services. Share with me how far you think this will go, and if there will be a turnaround. As you mentioned, Joe Biden has mentioned that when people go to the polls, that this is what they should be thinking about it, and it has been a hot button issue for quite a while.
Yeah, it has been a hot button issue, and frankly, it shouldn't actually be a hot button issue. The fact that abortion has become politicized. So if you look at Argentina, the way that Argentina was able to legalize abortion was to show that it's healthcare. Unfortunately, within the US, the Supreme Court has been co-opted by the religious right, and the religious right believe that abortion is murder. They fundamentally believe that a fetus is a human and that an abortion is murder. And there's really no changing their minds. And so that's what's happened in the US is they've politicized it, but they've really politicized it on the basis of religion. So what's ironic about the whole Supreme Court decision is that they say nothing about religion. They say it's about, oh, well, abortion was not originally enshrined in the Constitution, but then they pass something about a week later that's saying prayer is allowed in schools. So is there any question that the Supreme Court is incredibly religious? In terms of how do we reverse this? So there's a couple things that can happen. So there's measures that we can take in the meantime to help the current situation. So for example, I mean, you talked about the House resolution. The problem is that's never going to pass the Senate. I mean, that's our big issue in the US is that our country is majority Democratic, but every state has 2 senators, with the exceptions of Washington, D.C., where I am, which I think is ludicrous. And so states' rights are very intrinsic to America. And it's important to also note that the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade does not mean that abortion is illegal on a federal level. What it means is that it's up to the states now. And so states that have overwhelming Republican lawmakers and legislatures are now basically have a free-for-all to do whatever they want about abortion.
All right, Samantha,
so what are the possible scenarios? Yep.
All right, just quickly finish we have run out of time, but just quickly finish that train of thought.
Yeah, so the thing that needs to happen is we need to abolish the filibuster and add more Supreme Court justices to the court, and or impeach Supreme Court justices who said in their hearings that they believed Roe v. Wade was settled precedent and we're not going to act on that. So the message is people need to get out a vote. We need 2 more senators. We need to abolish the filibuster and be able to add more justices to the Supreme Court. That's ultimately the only long-term decision that's going to be able to really fix this.